Blab.im. So welcome everybody. We've got a few viewers live, and then this will be recorded for later on. Hey, look, we can get either Tom or Tracey or both in there.
Perfect. I love it.
Great.
Hi, guys.
Tracey.
Hey.
Welcome.
How's it going?
It's going good. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hear you.
Okay. Great. Got
Perfect.
this gigantic thing. How about that?
And then the ATR 2100 there.
That's right.
Yeah. Right on. So you caught my quick message there.
Tom got it. Yeah. While
Good.
we
Are
were
you
having
familiar
dinner.
with Blab?
No, this is my first time.
Perfect.
Great.
Awesome. Yeah. So Tracey, you know John?
We have spoken just last week.
I like it. And then Tracey, this is Bartosz,
Hi.
another 3D guy up in Canada.
Wonderful. All these Canadians.
It's a stacked deck up here. Yes.
I told someone yesterday that Canada was a hotbed for 3D printing, and they looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, no, really?
Yeah. It still surprises me how many cool things are going on in Vancouver and or Canada in general in the 3D space, and how many things came from Canada that we took for granted. One thing that a little nugget that I'll drop is the guy that actually created Skyforge is from Vancouver, and which is the basis for a lot of these open source slicing tools in the 3D space. And he actually came out to one of our meetups once, the 3D 604 meetups, and we even offered to give him a 3D printer, but he was really into it for more CNC, and he was building a canoe or a kayak or something like that, which is why he made better software than what was available. And then he gave it away, and I don't know where he is now. So yeah, so I guess we'll just sort of talk about, Tracey and Tom and I had a chat the other day about 3D printing and on their podcast, which is really cool. And so that'll be, I guess, released to the internets in a couple of weeks.
Closer to at the end of the month.
Oh, so. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
And you talked about a little bit about your Canada project, John. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So 3D Canada is a project I'm working on with Douglas Copeland. He's a Canadian author and artist. He's probably best known for writing the book Generation X and coining the term Gen X, as well as Microsurfs, which is my favorite book of probably all time, and probably one of the books that got me interested in technology, ironically. So we're basically going across Canada, about an 18-month project. Every city that has a Simons store, which is a department store chain that's based in Quebec, they've commissioned us to basically come, and we're basically going to be 3D scanning and printing little busts of, I wonder if I actually have one here. Yeah, I do. I have me. I have a little mini me. And so basically, we're doing this in the store for the customers. And then when the customers get scanned, they also give us the right for us to use the scan data for a larger art project, which Doug is working on, that will be basically, it's really hard to describe because it's still kind of being formulated, but the goal is to scan 1,000 people and have 1,000 heads that we're going to then digitally do something to be determined how they're going to be arranged and organized and manipulated.
Cool.
And then they'll be printed probably pretty close to life size, maybe 80% life size, a good 5 or 6 inches tall, depending on hair and structure and everything like that. And then those items will then be gold leafed and varnished, so they'll last forever, basically. And they'll be installed in the it'll be installed in the Yorkdale store for Simons in 2019 is when it's ultimately going to live there.
Which is what I found is the coolest part. I mean, the coolest part is that Simons had the vision to go ahead and commission this art project and have the foresight to see that 3D printing was just going to be such a cool way to involve the public. I mean, that's the really most amazing part about it, is that takes a lot of vision.
And we've had a ton of fun showing 3D printing to people, because these people, they hear about it either through the media, and we've actually had some really great local coverage in each city that we've been to, as well as Canadian-wide press. So we get a really great turnout. We have to turn people away, unfortunately, because we have so much time in each city. But we're actually 3D scanning them in a little booth that we've set up in the store, and then we're printing them in the store. So they get to see the whole process, and everything is sort of out on the table, literally, for them to see at this whole process. And we even have like screens hooked up to my laptop so people can actually see it when I'm working on their scan or that kind of thing. So they really get to see the whole process. And like Tracey was saying, this is really cool for a lot of people because they've never seen this. This is the kind of stuff that us geeks have had in our garage for a while, or in an R&D facility in some big company, but you don't expect to see it in a mall, in a clothing store. So it's
definitely
cool. Yeah.
So this is sort of my question with regards to all, for example, these retail outlets using 3D printing in their promotion, as well as and through their advertising and things like that. But we were talking earlier about how there's a lot of 3D printing happening in Vancouver, but why isn't there yet a dedicated 3D printing store in Vancouver? I mean, you've got stores all over the place in larger cities, and we've got a really big 3D printing community, but I've yet to see like a retail outlet. I'm one of those people who likes going and sort of touching stuff and seeing it. Shopping online there's a little something missing, and I'm just surprised that we still don't have a store yet.
Yeah, Tracey had a mentor application competition, and one of them was proposing a business like that. And it is interesting to see what kind of communities will come out with that facility first, that organization, that store first. Is it the big city? Is it the 100,000 person town that's kind of more of a community?
Do you guys have Microsoft stores there?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a couple.
So they still have 3D printing in their store. I mean, so I've seen it as aspects in the store, but you're right, John. That was the thing is about that mentorship application is, here's a store plan for having 3D printing, a 3D printed store, and selling 3D printed products through that store as well. But the problem with it is that there's not enough money in it. And so it's too early for them. It's really just a demo piece. So you need somebody with pockets like Microsoft to say, okay, yeah, we'll put this in. Maybe they need to go all in bigger right now than they are. And, that's a question of whether or not somebody will do that. But there just isn't a return on investment for someone to start up something like that. So I can totally see why it hasn't happened yet.
But you also see, like MakerBot had a number of retail stores, which in the great downsizing that happened recently, those are shuttered. Even the Microsoft stores, I've noticed, have actually started to back away from 3D printing. The Canadian Microsoft stores that I've been to have no printers in them anymore. I used to always go to Seattle and Portland and buy filament there because it was the cheapest. For MakerBot branded filament, because in Canada it was basically at par when our dollar wasn't, and so it's interesting that you can't even buy it online anymore. It's all sold out. So on the website, Microsoft website. So yeah, I think your point is valid. Is people haven't figured out how to market or sell this to the everyday consumer. There's such a limited showrooming is big in all product categories for sure, and we're seeing that across the board in Canada and the US. But like Tinkering has a storefront for their printers. It's also their warehouse too. So it's a very, interesting, fun space to hang out. But they're not actively selling printed products there. They're selling printers and they're selling filament and they're showcasing what their machines can do. But that's pretty much it. And it's really just an operation where their employees come and make the machines that has a little bit of retail space in the front. But we're seeing more and more like libraries and schools, those kinds of places that are getting interested in this. But even them, they're having trouble figuring out how to price this stuff. It's not like a photocopier where, it's 20 cents a copy. How much would this cost at the library versus sending it to Shapeways, right? So, and then, you have to have a technician, or do you have a makerspace that you rent out the machine if you know how to use it or you've taken the training? It's still a bit of a steep curve, I think, to be accessible.
Yeah. And also consumer education and having consumers that actually know what's happening and where to go and what they're dealing with and getting into, really.
Yeah. So the Mentorship Winner is from Africa, from Nigeria, and he is doing somewhat like that, where he wants to have a learning space. So it's somewhat of it's not quite a maker space because they definitely are selling their services within it. So it's not just a community program, but an education space, a learning space. A learning space, obviously, an education space, a selling space, a place where they could resell some of the printers and other things, because there isn't access to that in their country right now. So that's an issue. And then on top of that, though, he expects to sell services like, like their engineering services, their CAD modeling services and things like that. And that's going to be great because they'll sell that to local businesses. But right now, the biggest problem that they have is how are they going to get enough visibility for it? It's the same kind of thing. Like, we're talking about building awareness, but they have like zero awareness, and they have, less infrastructure than we do. Like, they don't have sources for materials, even like for them to get the materials. So he's hoping to be that source for all of that. And that's Afera 3D, AFERA 3D, if you want to look him up, because he does have a website and it's kind of interesting. But I think the real trick right now for the growth for those that have 3D printer companies, those that are selling education packages like you, John, is the partnerships. Are you getting the good partnerships with printer companies who really want to get it out there to those that are going to learn? So if you're the printer that is in John's program, then you at i3D Creatives, then the club is all getting used to that printer. That's a great audience and entry-level way to be in. If you want to be the printer that's in Nigeria at this moment that may go through the whole continent of South Africa, that's a big thing. Be the material, be the printer. Those partnerships are key. So I can't remember what the printer was that you're doing on the 3D Print Canada project, but they're so smart because everyone's seeing that.
It's
there
this
it is.
Guy right here.
Yeah.
It's a Ditto Pro.
The Tinkercad, that's right.
Yep. But Shashi just mentioned about a space in Seattle called Metrics CreateSpace. It's a true maker space, but it's also spawned a lot of really interesting products and services. They have that's where the console came from. Johan lives and works in Seattle, and he basically designed the console in the makerspace there. And then Terrence from OpenBeam, he also had a couple of Kickstarters for the various OpenBeam based printers that he was building as well, the Console Pro and a few other ones like that. And they also made some the Brainwave board, like a whole bunch of bits and parts that make 3D printers that are used not necessarily just in those ones, but in other ones as well. So, it's a fun place to go and hang out any Friday night or Saturday when you're whenever I'm in town.
That's in Seattle?
Yeah, it's in Seattle. Highly recommend it. It's right in the College District. There's lots of restaurants nearby. You can grab some food, go down there and have a beer and hang out with some nerds. That's
the other place I said is a hotbed for 3D printing right now. All up in Seattle. And because everyone kept asking, is everything going on in Silicon Valley? And I say the actual stuff around the printers, the people I've been talking to on our podcast are all over the place. And not one of them yet has been in Silicon Valley.
Yep. Just, I guess Carbon 3D is one of the big ones there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Type A is also in Silicon Valley.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of back to that point that Tracey was talking about getting it in front of people today. It's right now the companies have a big opportunity to create lifetime value, because if you can get the printers in the hands of some of these people, they're probably going to buy another one and another one and another one and potentially never buy another printer, another brand again. And I think that's an important part in play that they should really consider, and I think it's important for them. I think it's more important than some of them give it credit for.
So we've been testing out a bunch of printers here because I'm super excited about some new product reviews we're doing on the blog and on the podcast. And I have to say, I kind of fell in love with the Polar 3D.
Really?
Yeah. It's so simple. And you could like bang it and it will still work. I mean, it might mess up your print, but the machine's like gonna keep going. And so like it's great for kids, and it's so small, and it's $800, and actually it's even cheaper. I think it's $600 for education. Right. I was like, I mean, I think it's a great entry level. Like I think that, I mean, that's what we've experienced, is that there's certain printers you want to start with because they have less to mess with, and if you don't want to be a hacker and you don't want to deal with all that like variables, start somewhere. And I kind of impressed with it. Tom and I were talking like, our designs are a little demanding, so it may not work, but I'd love to have like an entire like bank of them, wall of them, farm of them, whatever you want to call it. I'd love to have one. Yeah, like little, I just love it. It's so cute. So what is that one, John?
This is the M3D.
The M3D.
Bartosz has one as well.
I've got one too. Let me out here.
Yeah, I just placed an order for 14 today.
Did you?
Really?
Oh, I'm going to have to check that one out then. Ooh,
yeah, it's nice.
See, it comes in pretty colors.
Yeah, even the kids can move it around. So it's really easy. It's
very, very small. It's quite robust. I think the only thing is that it's slow.
Yeah.
But we're worked with it. It's a really literally plug and play.
I got to get one now.
Operation with it.
They're super cute. And, you know, the other cool thing I like about it is, if I can do this backwards, maybe not. It's fully self-contained. The spool of filament's actually underneath the bed.
Oh.
So it's very safe. It's being next to impossible for a kid to hurt themselves on it. And you can also use external filament feeding. The only downside is, of course, you have to be tethered. So.
But great for a demo. Like you can take it with you.
For $350 too. Yeah, which is pretty much undercutting everybody else.
I bought it so I could literally put it in my carry-on bag.
Nice.
They're not going to get upset about the nozzles traveling. Let's hope.
Yeah, and
we'll see.
I don't know if anybody follows this. The 3D Hubs. They have their monthly printer stats. I'm trying to pull it up here. I can't really find it.
Oh yeah, this past month. Yeah, it was way up on the list.
The Micro 3D, I think, is reached number 1 of the sort of hottest printer on their list right now. I'm not imagining that it's doing too much production work, but it's good that it's getting a lot of exposure because it's a very reliable little platform. I've been using it pretty solidly almost every day for about a month and a half now, and I haven't had a serious failed print yet, other than prints that I've canceled on my own. So for a starter printer that you can literally pull out of the box,
it's the same price as the gaming console.
I think it's pretty good.
I know, really.
That's my logic. It is
right.
When I talk to parents, it's like you get them PlayStation or you get them a 3D printer.
Yeah.
What's going to be the better learning opportunity? So, that's a no-brainer for a parent. I really think so.
You can't play Minecraft on it, but you can print Minecraft on it. So
yeah, totally cool.
The bridge.
Yes.
From virtual to physical.
Mm-hmm.
What other fun things are you working on? Any of you? John?
I'm in the midst of prepping 11 videos for Tinkercad. That's what I'm going to be working on the next little bit.
Nice.
Getting those, probably work through the weekend on those, and that's the main one. And I've just finished putting together the membership platform, so that's good.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's great. We just recorded our 100th episode this week. You guys
are wheeling.
Yeah. So look, we had.
Amazing job.
You can see it. It says 100 on it.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's our titanium anniversary. This is titanium.
Cool.
It was really fun to have a metal 3D printed because mostly we talk about FFF. I mean, it's what the FFF, right? So, yeah. But we decided to depart from that because metal is just such a cool material we had to talk about.
Nice.
So our first foray into the metal.
Speaking of metal, there's a new Sisma. Have you guys heard what's going on with Sisma? They're an Italian print manufacturer, and I'm just going to post up the link here of what they've been working on. It's basically the idea of 3D printed fabric, but completely in metal. So it's going to be, they're talking about applications in jewelry and stuff. And I just posted up that link if you guys want to have a look. They've got this animated GIF right there on the picture, and it shows just a small sort of a little swatch, but that's metal, right? And it's think chainmail, but on a much more detailed or a much finer scale. So I think there's some really cool advances. If you scroll down through the article, you'll see like they have a watch band and like that. I think there's going to be some really neat advances in sort of print in place and being able to print mechanisms on a really nice and fine scale. So this has some applications not only I think in jewelry, but as well as robotics and well, I think it looks pretty limitless just based off the article that I've read here. I thought 3D printingindustry.com. So have a look at it.
Wow, that's impressive.
Did you see that there?
That's interesting that you say robotics, because I think that will be one of the more interesting applications of it, to see how it gets integrated into that field, because that's a lot more intricate and detailed than I expected when you were talking about it.
Well, usually that's the thing that we see a lot with 3D printing in the media. It's usually one piece. It's a part. It's rare that you see that the feature of printing that you can print an entire functional mechanism in one shot without assembly. That's, I think, very overlooked. Oftentimes, I always go back to that Strand Beast print that I have, and when people ask me, "Oh, did you get this as a kit and did you put it together?" I say, "No, it came this way out of the machine," and then people's minds are blown because it's like an actual it moves, right? And it's the fact that you can only do that through additive manufacturing, I think, and yeah, it's just a little bit of an overlooked benefit, right? So I think that if I'd like to see more of those kinds of stories, right, where you've got things that are printed in place. That's sort of been the thing that I've been looking at lately. So definitely a lot of design challenges with that. You have to be able to think on a few different levels. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been talking to a lot of people who've been looking at things like that, like Adaro Manufacturing, who did that metal piece for us. They have been doing underwater ROVs, and so you're stuck there if you're missing a part or you need something. And so they're talking, that's what they're looking at, is also being able to make it, prototype it, get it to do what they need it to do, and then having all the replacement parts right out there on the water for them so they don't lose any time when something gets corroded or something happens to it. And Gigabot, they were talking about, they have those gigantic printers that have like 10-foot build plates or whatever, putting them out on oil rigs and things like that. So, that having your part designed so it can be done in place without post-finishing and all the other things is really also critical. But being able to just have the machinery and have the capability of doing that is just going to really change the way those industries are operating, how efficient they are, how much downtime they have, and, really what they're capable of.
Yeah, and then it changes the entire supply chain of a business when you can just print the things when you need. And so like the best example is like auto manufacturers need to hold spare parts for 25 years, trains for 35 years. And so now when you don't have to upfront manufacture that equipment and you can only print it when you need it, where you need it, it changes the whole cost structure of it. So of course we're not there yet, but as the technology comes down in price eventually, it'll definitely have big impacts there, I think.
Yeah.
I think once, because the enterprise level printing is now sort of gaining that more widespread adoption, and it's becoming something that, big companies are comfortable with now. They've wrapped their heads around it. So once you've got your GEs and your, Siemens and all those, the big manufacturing conglomerates, once you've got them using 3D printers and people knowing that they use 3D printers. And I think you're going to have your smaller manufacturing outfits starting to bring those industrial systems in a little bit, because they'll see, oh, well, GE's doing that. They've managed to save a lot of money. So I think we're going to start seeing that pretty soon, maybe in a couple of years, probably 5. But hopefully here in Canada, we'd get to see a little bit more of that, because that's something that I've been just listening to. We have the election coming up, and they talk a lot about what's going to happen with the manufacturing sector. Canada, I think, has a really great opportunity here to become a leader in additive manufacturing and do a lot of the work that they've been doing in traditional ways, adopting these new technologies, because then, I think we can, remain competitive in that sort of global market as they're trying to be. So I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, sure.
Totally does. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of like, it's interesting to tie back to the education. I feel in Canada we're not completely the most progressive thinking all the time. In England, they've just announced that they're in every grade they're going to start teaching coding, and I don't think specifically parents around here are still pushing away from the idea that their kids should be on the computer. I find a lot more here than other places in the world. I think
that they're pushing them away from spending too much time on the computer.
Yeah, but maybe it's like that everywhere. But I from what I've seen from a little bit of time in California, and from what I've heard about what's going on in England and teaching coding to every grade and making it mandatory, just like reading and writing. I feel that it's important that it starts today, because they're going to be the ones that really are going to push it.
Well, I'm a parent. I have 3 girls, and one of them has taken John's program and started to learn CAD. Look, her first, upside down.
Nice.
First print, I don't know actually, which way does it go? I think it's that way. First print came out today. It's supposed to be a bracelet, so we had to have a rethink because our wrists are a little too small. So we've had a redo, and we've decided, and we want to turn all these numbers outside so they're on the outside of our wrist, because when we designed it on the computer, we didn't understand how our wrist would look in it. So she's 6. She's 6. Wow. She's just learning to read, and she already has. Yeah. It took her a while to master the mouse, because they get very used to touch screens and buttons, and they don't get used to so that took us a while, but we got over that learning curve, and now she's figuring out how the program works. She's designed something. It actually printed. She's starting to understand about iteration. So to me, I think actually 3D printing from a parent's perspective makes the computer a much more interactive and getting that sort of trial and error that you need to learn in life. It's a great way to do that through 3D printing, and it has a great positive feedback. It's not just you're not just playing a game where you don't know if you're learning something from it or not. There's a physical output, and you've learned something. Did it work? Didn't it work?
That's kind of what sort of put us in this. We're in a very exciting time, because this is the first time in history that you can literally be interacting with the things that you make on the computer, right? So that there's the transition from the digital to the physical is now, it's basically seamless. And this has never happened before, right? We've got, we as adults, we've accepted this technology as something that, that's happening. But young people, what's going to happen there is I think they're going to have a far more sort of fluid understanding, right? And as you said, with your daughter, that she's learning about iteration, and now to her, iteration is going to be that second nature. Be like, okay, well, we can produce another one, and the understanding of those concepts, I think, has some ramifications, that go beyond just the practical aspects. It's like forward thinking, right? It's that type of problem solving on your feet, which as of yet I really haven't seen very many schools teach their students. So
No, it's hard. It's a hard subject. See, here in the U.S., and I don't know, I'm not going to speak for Canada, but it's here in the U.S. Everybody gets a trophy. Everybody is a winner, and you don't really. They don't want to teach their children to fail, but you have to learn to fail in order to learn to succeed. And that's really something that if we can do it in a safe, emotionally draining way, let's do that. And this is a great way to do that, because what happens, you get a bunch of junk plastic and you scrape it off and you recycle it or you throw it away and it's no big deal. And you start again and you've learned from your mistake. That, I think, is the biggest lesson as a parent we can give our children. And if 3D printing can do that, then I'm all for it.
One of the things that got me really interested in 3D printing originally was the fact that I'd spent the majority of my adult life making virtual things on the internet. Yeah. And, I never really got that sense of satisfaction of actually having crafted something that I could physically hold, like a carpenter would, or, you pick your trade basically. And so that's one of the things that, getting back to Bartosz's point about kids these days are learning these trades, and they're learning how to make physical objects versus doing it all digitally or all on the internet. It's really changing how people learn in a lot of ways, because of the fact they're not just thinking about making something for their internet webpage. They're also thinking about making something for their house or for their wrist or whatever. And it's fascinating to watch. It's a lot like when kids first got the internet or tablets and those types of things too, right? Like, they're able to pick up these things at a very young age and manipulate them better than middle-aged people can. They're not wired, pre-programmed to not be curious about that kind of stuff. So, and as the software and these tools get much more better, the other thing, again, going back to Bartosz's point about kids picking up these things, when I was in Edmonton, I bought a tablet computer. It's one of those Asus ones that you can detach the screen, and it's a Windows tablet that connects to a laptop. But being able to manipulate things like Tinkercad and other things by literally touching on the screen, if I can do that here, was pretty cool. And I ended up returning it because it wasn't really enough horsepower in this particular. I cheaped out. I got the cheapest one possible. But I'm beginning to see the benefit for people, at least in our space and probably schools and other places, of having an interactive interface for the type of things that we're doing. I have things like the Space Explorer mouse thing for manipulating 3D models and things like that, but it's not quite the same as having a touch interface where you can literally just like pinch and zoom and do things like that. And kids get that mindset early on with their iPads and other tablet devices. And so I'm really curious about something like the Sprout from HP, which is really meant to be like a designer's computer that has that projector and the scanner and all that stuff built in, where you can literally just manipulate empty space to create models and things like that. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years as far as interfaces go for these types of tools and technologies, with the output being a 3D printer.
Yeah, definitely. And as adults, we can't really think about or comprehend what it's actually like to grow up with that technology. And it's like you've seen the 2-year-old or even a 1-year-old, I think, grabbing a magazine and thinking it's an iPad that she can manipulate and change the magazine. Yeah. It's just like they get it from such a young age. And as an older generation, we can't even comprehend that. And like you're saying, John, how fast the technology is moving. It's going to be very interesting to see. Yeah.
And Shashi just chimed in that he's got a couple of Sprouts in his lab, and I'm very jealous because you get to actually play with one. Shashi works for Intel, so he gets a lot of cool stuff in his lab. So.
I was wondering because when I read about the Sprout, I thought to myself, oh man, it's going to be another one of these lame-ass all-in-one systems. And especially with this integration of the 3D scanner and all that stuff, I'm like, this isn't going to be good. But Shashi, what do you think? If they're that good, I'd definitely like to take another look at it. Because I've just become so very skeptical now by everything that's coming out. There's a new new tablet, new printer, new 3D scanner, and the more in depth I look, the less quality assurance I see. So,
everyone's just pushing their stuff on the media.
That's the thing, right? And especially with Twitter and everything else, because you curate your own feeds, right? So you're exposing yourself to that as well, and it's getting a little bit crazy. So yeah, it's good to hear from an actual user that the sprouts are legit, as opposed to
I wouldn't guess that they would be called amazing already.
So
surprising. Expected some little missteps in there, but that's interesting. I'm excited to check it out.
When I was at the Ford event in Silicon Valley at their R&D facility, the first stop we made was actually to HP's facility there, and they had a presentation from their head of the 3D printing department, the director of 3D printing, I guess, for HP, and he talked about the Sprout, and he also showed some pretty impressive samples from their printer. So there's no question that everybody's working on this stuff. It's just going to be interesting to see, is the Sprout going to be selling to thousands or millions of people? It's hard to say, right? It's the first of its kind. What's next year's Sprout going to be like? And you also have other things like HP also did the integration with the Leap Motion, so you actually have that 3-dimensional scanner thingy. I mean, I have one and I've barely used it.
That's my problem with it exactly too. Is it's great, but it needs to be in something. I mean, it can't be the little box that sits outside.
I bought it because I was excited about the possibility, and someone had apparently had written code for it before it was even shipping. Basically, it allows you to. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's a little box. It's about this big. It's basically an infrared. It's like a Kinect kind of thing, and it can see a really small distance in front of you or wherever it's attached to. Some people actually mount it to an Oculus Rift so they can actually see the 3-dimensional world. And but what it allowed, the reason I bought it, because it was like $75 on Kickstarter or something like that, is the ability to take your hands in front of your computer, and on the screen you would actually see digital Play-Doh, if you will, that you could actually manipulate with your fingers, and then you could export the output of that as a 3D model, which could then be 3D printed. And so that was interesting, but the main problem is that, well, everybody ends up making like an ashtray or some crazy ceramic class failure project. I mean, sure, there's people that can make amazing things. I'm not that person.
How is that compared to, let's say, the HoloLens? I saw that the demo on that online, and
well, I think the HoloLens probably uses aspects of the same or similar technology to measure the distances for stuff. The big challenge with all of this stuff is that there's no feedback to you, the user. You're just basically feeling around in midair, so you're like a mime, right?
So you don't have a sensory feedback.
No, you're not getting like vibrate or haptic kind of feedback when you're actually interacting with stuff, and I'm sure that's going to come. I just actually finished reading Ready Player One, and I don't know if you guys have read that geek book, and it talks about the future of VR, where you have these suits that have all the sensors that actually give you feedback, so you can actually feel you're interacting with something, even though you're just sort of laying on a couch, kind of thing. And I think that is what's missing for some of this stuff. Cause like we were talking on the podcast, Tracey, the big problem with 3D printing for a lot of people is getting from their brain to a printed object.
Yeah.
They don't know how to make those models that are complex and do all that kind of stuff. But if you had the ability to mold it like it was clay, and then that was something you could print, a lot more people would be able to play. Than having to be CAD experts, for example.
Kind of like a combination of a gestural control as well as that visual component, ideally in 3D space, right? So whether it's through some sort of HoloLens thing, or and a pair of gloves so you can actually see what you would be working on, or if it's even some sort of a big screen. With regards to the haptic feedback, when SIGGRAPH was in town, it was a little while ago now, but there was they had a lot of those ultrasonic the ultrasonic projections, basically, where they would those tiny speakers would force project sound waves, and you would feel them instead of being able to hear them. And some of them are pretty good. And I think you can tune it to varying distances. So if you have something like a Kinect, and there would be some sort of feedback where it would project that feeling onto the sort of imaginary surface, and you got your lens on thing, and then anyway, that's kind of a little sci-fi right now. We'll see in 18 months what happens next product cycle.
I think, in addition, I think the really big problem is that, we all talk about this, but we're all designers and we've all used CAD and we all have that kind of experience, but the general public just doesn't. And if you're going to tipping point and get to mainstream, you really have to get to a stage at which the clip art, for lack of a better way, just the 3D clip art, right? The things available to you. I mean, that's really what Thingiverse is. It's like 3D clip art.
And here's the question, though, right? Do we, just like the sort of with the desktop revolution, everyone was, did everyone become a designer? No. And I'd argue that design has gone downhill since the advent of, widely accessible, anybody can be a designer sort of attitude, right? There's a lot of stuff that's it's okay, but not very good. So, giving people the ability to produce a lot of really terrible objects, I don't know if that's quite a good thing, right? Because you can imagine there's those who use stuff and there's and design stuff, but then again there's people who just consume it, right? Yeah. So. Well, I think it'll be kind of funny as well as a little bit scary to see the crazy things that people can come up with once being able to once you literally can make anything, just at home. So
yeah. So what do you guys think about like the artificial intelligent kind of auto-generative design topic, where potentially you could just talk to your computer and tell it what you wanted?
Well, there's the Star Trek holodeck thing, right? Basically, it all comes back, as I said last time. Sorry, all comes back to Star Trek.
It does
all the time. Everything does.
I was gonna say, John. Why couldn't I ask Siri to design me something? Like start off with a template from Thingiverse, like take a stove oven knob for a GE range, blah, 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 model number, and change it and invert it and make it green. Like be able to dictate your design cues to it, so that you're starting off with something that is known and then you're modifying it for your purpose. I don't think we're crazy far off from that, but certainly
I don't know if I want to call it design. That's really it.
Totally.
No, it's more like customization of an existing design.
Yeah. But, well, that Autodesk is working on it. I
saw the demo.
Yeah. At CES, Carl Bass was talking about it.
I saw it at in Pasadena at a trade show, and what they did, which was really interesting, is that they let the computer decide what the structure, and I think it was like a exhaust manifold for a motorcycle or something, and they said, what's the most efficient way to make this cost-wise, what's the most efficient way to build this and design it, and it came out looking like a Nautilus shell. I mean, it looked like something fractal, and it had all these chambers and everything, and it was more efficient. It worked better. It was faster produced. It required less hand done, weld marks and things like that. And it was amazing. And so I think there is a way, yes, in certain things that you should let nature. And that's what they were mapping that on, is the natural design method.
The other nervous system?
Nervous system,
yeah. So they do a lot of work in that, right?
Yeah, and the other example that Carl was talking about was on a motorcycle as well, but they were doing the frame of the motorcycle. And so what happened was it ended up looking almost identical to a cat pelvis.
Yes.
So again, back to biology. And it's kind of like that the computers ran all those iterations and figured out the best possible way, kind of the way that evolution has.
But is that because that's what they put into it, or do you think it truly was because that was the best design possible?
Because it was the best. Yeah, it ran a whole bunch of different designs through its processing power, and then came out with that design. The big difference was one side had more mass on it than the other because of the torque from the chain. It had to resist against more force on the side with the chain. So it's very interesting how that auto-generative design is very close to biology.
Yeah,
and
it
makes
sense.
A fractal design mentality. It's something that we call it bionomic. That's something that Tom and I have practiced a long time. And bionomic means life-loving, and so that your design makes the generations of learning that you've had over how to navigate your world better, how to do all of these things. It sort of takes it into consideration, and the fractal design method goes to that. And of course, it's math-based, so it really lends itself to additive manufacturing. And so those two things really for us is really what has just kind of taken off on our design aesthetic and why our designs look the way that they look, because all of those things are built into it. But I mean, it's not something that I could figure out how to mathematically code because there's a certain amount of design involved in that and decisions that are made because I know my audience, I know who it's got to sell to. And that's the thing is, like, at the end of the day, does a motorcycle that look like a cat pelvis or whatever part that is the Harley guy going to buy that? And so that's where you still got to step in and make some concerted decisions as a human to say, This is the right thing or this isn't. And that's kind of what's missing in a lot of these things. I think it's great that we're exploring these programmatic ways to kind of help people learn how to design, but let's leave it at that and let's make sure that they're all learning design.
Yeah.
Or at least the fundamentals of it, right?
Right.
And that kind of thing, right? It's I mean, because you can teach anybody to write software or to use software and even write it, but unless you've got there's that. I guess I hate to say it, but I agree with my teachers, my art history teachers. They're like, you have to understand where it comes from.
The masters.
Just my 2 cents there.
You got to study the masters.
And learn their techniques too, right?
Yeah,
that's another important thing. So I think that's just sort of stuff about that.
Yeah, and in i3D Creatives, I mean, that's one of the things, John, that I like most about your program is that when I was watching Linnea step through that, it's also teaching you design principles in a way, because you're starting with basic primitives and then you're moving up, and the stepping of it is important to understand design thinking long term. They don't realize they're learning it at that stage, but then when they get to the next one, they're going to realize how important those fundamentals were. You got to keep that kind of going, and that's one of the things that I think is missing in some of the educational programs I'm seeing at the older age, because they just think, well, of course they had art classes, they must know these design principles, but here in California, we're lucky if you get art once a month. So, there's a lot of schools that don't have that, so they don't have that background, and if you stick those printers in the science lab or the math lab, they haven't gotten the other part of it that teaches them how to think to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And it's interesting because I just ran 100 beta testers through the platform, and in every message that I sent to them opening up, I'm like, it's designed for like a teenager, so I hope you appreciate that's okay with you. And almost all of them are like, absolutely, I cannot appreciate the simplicity of it more, like, enough. Like, they're just like, we need the basics. It has to be done in the basics first. And it is that stepping blocks, just like math class was growing through high school.
It's funny, when my book came out, I got a bad Amazon review because I was too basic. And my book is really meant for the person that knows nothing, right? So you have to walk through the primitives. You have to learn how to add and subtract various parts before you can start designing, engines, and this person was mad because it's like, it's specifically targeted at beginners and from 6 to 600. It doesn't really, there's no age specifically implied, but if you don't understand these basics, which is really what the book was to help you do, is just like, here's the terminology, here's the basic concepts, run with it. The next book might be how to do something more advanced, but for the beginner, you have to start somewhere. And so many people want to get to the second level or the advanced level stuff right away without really understanding how those things work and how they interplay with each other. Take out the whole design conversation as well, but just fundamentally, how do these tools and widgets work with each other? And so many people don't get that, and you can see it on Thingiverse when you look at some of the really bad designs.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you can see it.
Yeah, the foundation of the house is the most important.
That's right.
You got to build the foundation.
So yeah, don't get me started on Thingiverse, because I could talk a whole hour on that one.
Yeah. I was in Tinkercad going through it again today, and I noticed that anybody can just like press one button and their design automatically goes to Thingiverse.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a think before you push that button.
It's interesting. It's interesting too, because like in a lot of the workshops that I've run, the accounts that people use for Tinkercad are managed by the school or the instructor. They're not student-based classes, especially for the younger kids, because they have to have their parents' permission, and it's a complex Autodesk thing, right?
So what's the most efficient way to do that, John?
Well, what we've done at Zen Maker Lab is we have a Zen Maker Lab account and let the kids just do whatever they want. Potentially, I guess they could go and delete somebody else's stuff, but they just basically save everything themselves, and then they can download them to their computers. But most of the time, at least in our lab, they're using our computers. Very few kids bring their own. So, there's really no reason why they'd want the file after the class is over, unless they want to continue working on it. But we can certainly provide that to them. But it just from a adult guardian kind of thing, it's just easier, and it really scares me that it's that simple to publish crap to Thingiverse. And I see it on the stream. I have an RSS feed for all the new stuff in Thingiverse, and you'll see like 20 copies of the same thing by Susie, and it's great that she's doing it, but she doesn't realize that every time she presses that button, it's creating something on Thingiverse if her accounts have been mapped. And yay for design numbers going up on Thingiverse, but I mean that's why I work with PinShape, because it's a better place.
And it's created such an opportunity for PinShape because of it.
Yeah, I just finished a blog for them, and that went live this week, and it was really talking about how to price your designs and thinking about not offering it for free, and that actually offering designs for free not only hurts the 3D printing industry as a whole, because it devalues the design process, but it actually isn't a great idea for your own design portfolio, because most of the people who are out on PinShape and other sites that are of that caliber, Cults 3D and some of the other ones, that they're trying to establish a name for themselves as designers. It's not just a hobby. They are designers in some other capacity already, or artists in some other capacity. So you don't want to devalue your own art by doing that. That's not to say you shouldn't offer a few designs for free so that people can get a sense of the fact that you do make very printable designs, that you know what you're doing, and that there are things, but that you really should offer them for at least some amount of a price. And so trying to determine that price is, of course, a very difficult thing. I mean, I teach an entire course on that. So, it's not an easy subject. But, time to design, time to build, and some other factors in your skill and artistic and the market, all those things have to be considered. But it's such a critical part. It's just establishing that this took time and it has value. And overall, that's actually going to help the market understand that these things aren't going to be free in the long term. If you thought in your business plan that this was going to be free and you were going to be able to do that, it's just not going to happen. It might happen for a period of time here as we're building an industry, but it's really not going to happen long term, and it's not sustainable for your business. And you won't get the good design.
That's like PinShape's, I guess unofficial tagline is they're the iTunes of 3D models. You can get some great stuff for $1 on iTunes, and the same thing on PinShape. There's pretty amazing designs available for very little cost, and this is basically just to help foster, the designer to continue to do that stuff. And that's what people don't understand is like, I can spend a lot of time on a design. I'm not going to necessarily want to give it away for free. So chipping in $1 or a couple of bucks for that is really not much. Again, if you're offering something people want.
Right.
Yeah, and consumers, they often express themselves through the purchases they make, and by putting value on it, it's them expressing their value in a way by saying it's worth paying for it. And I don't know.
Well, my big point is that, you know, in a sense that, you know, if what you have to offer is of so little value that someone could sit around and go, for an hour I could do that myself, right? Then why are you putting it up there to begin with? Let them do it themselves, you know. But if what you really have was really worth it, if it took a lot of time and a lot of energy and it's very personal, and, you know, then yeah, charge something for it, because you just got to assign a value to that, saying it's not, you know, I'm not here. I'm not here. Now, if it's just a charitable venture, by all means do that. But even in charitable ventures, like we talked to some people early on the podcast, you know, makerspaces who were doing projects for free, they were doing it for publicity. So, you know, you just got to recognize it for what it really is that. But the audience, that if PinShape is going to grow, if these kinds of sites are going to grow, then they need shoppers. They need people who really want to buy models, who really don't want to design themselves, but really, you know, don't have the time. They really want it. They're shoppers. So let's gear the site for shoppers. Let's put designs out there that are for shoppers. These are, you know, those kinds of levels of things that I'm talking about, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
I got to read that article.
Yeah. There's another one coming out on tagging.
Spot on.
Yeah, that was something we talked about on the podcast, on your podcast, Tracey, is just the terminology that these sites are using. They're speaking to the 3D printing geeks. They're not speaking to the consumers that are their probably potentially biggest untapped customer.
Exactly.
Good point.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is that it's like I keep saying, there's a lot of people who call me or send us emails and messages and will say stuff about, you know, hey, I've got a Shapeways shop, or I've got this, you know, what do you think? Should I have an Etsy shop? And my answer is absolutely. And you want to know why? Because Etsy's are shoppers. If you want to know if your product, if your design idea has value, regardless of whether it's 3D printed, that's the place to test it. Yeah. You know?
Totally.
Who's going to buy it? Women, and women are on Etsy. That's where that's going to be. Now, that's not necessarily
and Pinterest.
For downloads. Downloads are a little bit different right now, but for an actual printed product.
If you have a look at Etsy or any 3D printed stuff on Etsy, it's pretty slim pickings though.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of it is really bad, and the 3D printed jewelry, quote unquote, you know, it's that big chunky SLS stuff that
low resolution
is going to go, and that stuff yellows in 6 months, and the dye comes right off of it. So I think once we have a little bit more of a a refined process about with regards to like how to create stuff for 3D printing and how to build stuff for 3D printing, then we're going to start seeing those products being more desirable for consumers. And I think then the likelihood of consumers buying models of their own is going to go up.
Yeah, I
think that. So you have to have it's sort of a chicken or the egg thing, right? First, you have to have some really good 3D, like completely 3D printed consumer products, and then once people see that there are 3D printed consumer products, then they're more likely to I think buy designs, because you've got to see the finished product first, but it's got to be a compelling enough product too.
I don't disagree. What do you guys think of the Amazon product store, the 3D printed product store?
I haven't seen it lately.
The one where they have 3D printed products that you can put up. See, that's the problem. It's got to be curated.
Well, they are. They only allow so many design firms in, because you had to apply. You cannot put up products on that.
Oh, okay, all right. So I might be. I thought it was just user submitted content. I just separated with Amazon Prime, so I haven't been back there because I had a bit of a credit card spending spree on Amazon, so I haven't been back for a while. Right, so
no. So the 3D printed product store, the way that the Amazon product store works now, this is for getting 3D printed product, so not like printers and filament and things like that. It's the actual product that you buy. So
3DLT?
No,
Amazon.com?
No,
I'm here. Yeah, it's got a bunch of designers, right? And then they've got like 3D printed T-Rex skull pendants, GoPro mount for scuba mask printed. Okay, so it's kind of like a Shapeways.
They don't print it though. You have to print it yourself, or some of the shops. So like Mixie Labs is a Shapeways type of shop, but they only print their own stuff. They don't print other people's. Although they do, I think they invited a curated group of artists to work with them as well. And but you have to.
I'm just running through the. I'm running through the products here.
Yeah,
that's the thing, but it's not something anyone is. Nobody is going to want to buy a 3D printed cell phone holder black for $48. No one's going to do that unless it has a little display screen and makes coffee for you, right?
But I bet you Amazon, once the technology comes down low enough, they'll be one of the first ones to jump on heavy manufacturing in their
Well, they filed patents to print on a truck,
right?
And it's so broadly written though that it doesn't have to be a truck. Like that's how broadly
it could be
written.
A drone.
It could be printed on anything, a temporary. Yeah, it's pretty broad. It's it's basically like on-demand printing. So you order it, it's printed, it comes to you.
You're going to need really fast printers for that.
Like, yeah, I know. It's not ready yet, but they filed the patents already, and they were first to file. So, that's the...
Well, how'd they do it in Star Trek, Bartosz?
Well, they run it's matter energy conversion on Star Trek, and we're not quite there yet. But as far as the way things are going, I bet you we'd probably be there somewhere in the next 100 years.
So my question is that we were invited to the 3D printer product store, and we've been holding out because we didn't know what to put up yet. So we think we will offer up our 3D printed tie. Have you seen it? You've seen it, John. I know you've seen it. So
yeah, it's great.
I tried printing it.
Did you try it? Did it work? You crashed your machine.
No, my bed wasn't quite level, and I just haven't had a chance to restart it. But
it's
I
really
will get
challenging.
It done.
It's really challenging.
It's a very difficult print, but what it did turn out after about 8 hours of printing was pretty awesome. It skipped a couple things and it wasn't level. Yeah, but
that's the bottom of it.
It's very cool.
It's a full necktie. It has a chain at the top, and you put it around your neck.
And it does print in
one piece. That's a print in place.
It's a print. It prints in one. Yeah, it prints all in one piece in a spiral, and then there are supports, but minimal. Like you just break them off, and it doesn't require any cleanup or anything like that. And so it's easy for But in this case, we would print them and we would ship them. And that's how it works with them. They don't do prime. They don't FBA it, so they don't hold it in their factory at this point. But they do want to. That's what they want to do. But I can't imagine. It takes 19 hours to print. So can you imagine? They'd be like, this is crazy. It doesn't fit their model.
Well, your tie takes 19 hours to print how? On your printer?
On our printer, yeah.
Yeah, but and Amazon is using their own printers?
No. The way today's model work is you print it. You're the store. You print it.
So you download a model of your... Oh, okay.
No. We print it. We print it and ship it to whoever orders it. You're just ordering product. So.
I see. Okay. All right. I get it. So
I think one day they want to do what you're talking about, but it's not ready yet.
Okay. Yeah, totally. You're gonna need like 10 printers.
That's why I was thinking like the Polar 3D. They're so cheap, and look how cute they are. But you know what? The bed's probably not big enough.
No. Oh yeah, you're gonna need 10 really big.
Volume. I'm still not convinced that if we load it up there's even volume for it. Like, I mean, Tom was like, well, hey, if we sold one a day. I was like, if we sell one a week, because I mean, I don't think we can sell it for less than $100. It takes 19 hours. It's a lot of time and energy in it. And also, actually, when you wear it, it's really cool. Like, people stop you on the street and, I wish I could wear it, but I don't. But people stop Tom all the time and actually ask for it off his neck. So, I know that People want it.
I got a print one.
Are you guys able to offer like some customization as well with it?
Yeah, so that's what that's what we decided to do. What we decided to do was to offer just one model on Amazon, and that's what we think we're going with, and in multiple colors, because it does come in color. We have colors, and but then offer total customization. So like we have a winery up in Silicon Valley, the owner of it, who wants one with his logo in it, and and then he wants to give it out to his high value patrons. And so there'll be things like that. And we have a doctor who's running a lab in Belize who wants to, offer it to his high value donors with their logo on it. So like, we're going to start doing some of that eventually, but I just don't know. I was like, we haven't even been able to figure out how we're going to like get it ordered, get it, like there's still a whole bunch of stuff because it's not a core part of our business. So we'll see.
I like it.
All right, guys. Well, we're a little past 8 o'clock, and we wanted to keep this for an hour. So thanks for everybody for joining us. And you guys, the main participants, you should get an email with a downloadable version of this. You can share it on your favorite video streaming service at some point. And let's do this again next week.
We'll see you next Friday.
I'm going to be in Portland, unfortunately, with Shashi actually on Friday, but so I probably won't be able to join you guys. But I will coordinate with you all, and we'll definitely get something going on Friday with you guys if you want.
All right, sounds good.
I'll put Tom on it.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have Tom come on, so so you guys can meet my other half. So.
I like
Great.
it.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody, and I'm going to sign off now.
Thanks for having us.
We'll talk again next week.